Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Maverick. Happy birthday, Tom Cruise. It's Tom Cruise's birthday today. We thought we would open the show with a little happy birthday, Tom. Was that everything you thought it would be? Are we happy we did that?
Yeah.
No, that was
60
brilliant.
years young.
Very
I just hope
Elvis.
Huh?
That was very Elvis-like. Yeah.
I was going for a sultry, deeper Marilyn Monroe type thing. But how did I do on that? Not so great. Anyway, Tom Cruise's birthday. The guy is still on fire. He looks 40, I would say. Good year to be Tom Cruise. You think he looks 30?
Late 30s even.
I think he's starting to finally show his age. It's
a little bit, yeah.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but yeah, it does seem like the last few years, especially if you see like the new Mission Impossible trailer, like the one that they put out a month ago or something, and then if you see him in this new movie Top Gun, obviously you're starting to see a little bit of the not the sagging. Would you call it sagging skin? I don't know.
There's a little bit of crow's feet.
He's got a lot work done.
Like the guy, he's aging gracefully.
Yeah.
He is. Yes. Definitely looks very good for 60. So.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about that whole trying to stay young forever thing? I feel like if I were going to do it, if I were going to get old, I'm still debating whether or not I'm going to do it. But it's I think I would go the Sean Connery route and just like go balls and like just really embrace it and just look old.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't quite embrace it until pretty late in the game either, right? Like he hung on to the head of hair for as long as he could. And
yeah, but like
he had the scruff going.
Yeah, but like he wore a wig in movies.
That's true.
Because they wanted him to wear wigs in movies, but like when it was just him, it was just like Sean Connery. I'm gonna do what I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, it's almost like not everybody can pull off that, right? Because like you're talking about Sean Connery, the guy like. Sean Connery walked into the room, much like Tom Cruise. The man walks into the room, you feel that presence. And I think that
is also a choice.
It is a choice, but I think it's also part of it.
Do you think it's?
Yeah, go ahead, Max.
Sorry, then. No, because you keep making breaks, and I wasn't sure. Do you think it's because he does as many stunts? Do you think this crazy regime, the lifestyle he leads, kind of stops him from aging really quickly?
If anything, you would probably accelerate.
It would add on 2 years, right? Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. It would. Huh?
Wow, huge delay again. Nothing.
No, I was just going to say.
To full-on picture.
It would add on to his age because he broke he busted his knee filming one of the recent Mission Impossible movies. It's kind of like Daniel Craig injured himself, and that movie like got delayed by a year and a half because of it. I'm not saying these. I mean, none of these injuries are obviously like career-ending injuries, things of that nature. You never know when the next one, if that will be that career-ending injury. But I don't think that's what keeps him young. Obviously, it keeps him in good shape. Like
Sure. But everybody gets work done now, and that includes him. And I don't think you could say that doing stunts makes you younger. I think
it's the Scientology.
Maybe it's the Scientology.
They have some secret recipe, I'm telling you.
Could be. Could be. It's a good time to be Tom Cruise, I would say. He's doing the press circuit. He's on top of the world. He's the #1 movie star in world now. So
good for him. He earned it. Come on. He did. Worked his bum off.
By taking an active hand in the production of what is the highest grossing movie of the year and one of the best sequels ever made, I would say. he knows what he's doing, it seems. So,
Happy birthday!
That's all that to say, happy birthday, Tom. Nice to have you with us.
Have you guys seen what how he's started off his birthday? He went to the UK. He touched down in London in a chopper, and he spent some time with Luke Evans going to an Adele concert, which
of course
I actually watched a reel about that before I went to sleep last night. And Adele was like sort of tearing up because like her fans are starting to sing along with her, and it's like she hasn't toured in a while. Not to go on a tangent, but like, hey, Tom Cruise, look, Tom Cruise must be there somewhere in the crowd or backstage. I don't know.
Did she cover Highway to the Danger Zone or anything?
No, I think it was just her stuff. I don't know. I didn't read this article all the way.
Come on, Adele. What are you doing?
Yeah, actually, apparently, so he's hanging out with the crowd. Yeah. Oh, look, there's something about his paydays. What does this say?
I love how Luke Evans is like full on incognito, whereas Tom Cruise is like, yeah, no.
Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise wherever he goes.
Yeah, not even sunglasses, nothing. I like it because it makes him like more approachable as well, I suppose. Maybe he wants to be recognized. Anyway.
Yeah. Number one movie star in the world.
Yeah.
You're gonna recognize
him. A lot of people say he's like the last true movie star because when I say that, I know I brought this up before. I feel like what I mean by that is he's one of those last few guys. When you put his name on the marquee, he will draw an audience. Like, I mean, obviously you have guys like Dwayne The Rock Johnson and stuff, but Tom Cruise is still in a category all his own because he does his own stunts.
Yeah.
He's produces
Will Smith
his movies
can't
now.
do that.
Every movie he does now, he does with Paramount, and he's a producer, like credited producer, and he's the one who's driving a lot of the financiers to invest in the movie. So obviously that's part of the reason why he's a producer, and he's involved in things like training the actors. Yeah,
you know what else I'll say about him?
He has a clear understanding of how to sell films as well, how to make films, and
he's also not an active participant in the culture as it's going on. Like he really stays in his own lane.
Yeah,
but when he enters the mainstream, it matters because he doesn't comment on politics, or he didn't comment on the slap or Ukraine, or like he's stayed totally out of all that stuff, and he's really embraced his role in the world as an entertainer, and he's like, I'm here to entertain. I'm great at what I do. I'm going to do the best job I possibly can for you. That's what a good entertainer does, and he is.
Because he stuck to his truth for so many years.
Because he didn't try to be relevant and attach himself to every cause the way that everybody else in the world does. He's just stuck to what he does, and he's doing it well. Yeah,
and you know what? For that, he's finally got the highest grossing movie of the year. But I don't think he's really ever... Or maybe he might have had at some point, but it seems like of late, the highest grossing movies of the year are always like comic book movies or like a Star Wars movie or Avatar, Once Upon a Time, maybe once again this year. Who knows? By the end of the year, the Avatar might be the highest grossing movie of the year. But
I'll make a bet with you. I'll make a bet with you, and I'll say no. I think Top Gun will beat Avatar too.
I mean, it's got got a $1 billion head start, and
yeah.
But Avatar does come out in the December holiday season. I mean, Christmas time is like time to make money at the box office. So
yeah.
So it's summertime.
Do you think that it's been too long for people to care about Avatar again? Got one nod.
Okay, so I think the argument goes both ways, because I think for the younger audiences who don't remember the truth, because here's the thing, Avatar is one of those experiential movies that if you didn't watch it in the theater, if you weren't around for the hype when it was, it's, for example, like if the kids born today or in the last couple of years, they will see Avengers Endgame as the truth, as like the absolute worldwide and Infinity War like together, like the way they caught the cultural zeitgeist by storm. They won't remember that because they didn't experience it. Similarly, I don't think a lot of people who weren't there for Avatar when it came out and became this biggest movie of all time, especially if you watched it in 3D, like it would, a lot of movies are done terribly for 3D, and Avatar was done. It was the most well-designed 3D movie ever made because it was actually shot and it was handcrafted for 3D. If you don't have that experience, I don't think you'll revere it quite the same way. However, there are obviously a lot of people who are around who did experience all of that. I think for those people, the prospect of having that same experience once again, 13 years removed, that has a certain appeal to it. I don't think it's gonna reach the heights of Avatar from 2009, but I do think it's a potential to make $1 billion. I mean,
the 3D didn't do much for me back in 2009. It could have been that I had a really bad seat. I did.
I've never watched it in 3D,
but
so
I saw
I don't even know what I'm missing
the trailer
out.
for the new one in 3D when I went to see Lightyear 3D, and honestly, it does nothing for me. It really does nothing for me.
So should we talk about 3D as a broader topic?
We probably should.
I don't think 3D ever has done anything to me. Like,
yeah, I mean,
never enhanced my experience. IMAX. Okay, let's talk IMAX. When I first stepped into IMAX, I was like, wow, okay, this is something advanced. The 3D was just it. I see the entertaining aspect of it when you're a kid. Like, you're very entertained because you can catch bubbles and stuff, but seriously, when you're an adult,
I think the big problem with it, in terms of a technical thing, is like the vanishing point.
Right.
Because like in the new Avatar trailer, there's a part where you're in a stream, and it has the water coming up, and so then if you turn your head like here, it's like it stops right here, and so it's like, oh, it's not all encompassing. I know that's maybe being picky, but then in every other movie that uses 3D, it's like they find opportunity to be like, hey, look at this, sponge. Whoa! And it's like, the sponge is coming near me. It's not, and at least they weren't gimmicky like that. They were much more, with they were like dandelion seeds.
Yeah.
That was fun. But is that the reason to go see a movie? I mean, you can't feel anything. There's no feel around.
Well, unless you go to like the 4DX experience, and then you will smell things and you will move with the camera.
But not even that. But that's the thing. This 3D has not got the same effect as having your peripheral vision completely utilized, like with an IMAX. I still argue that the IMAX has a greater potential for you to be completely immersed in the story.
I agree.
And the visuals, like I would love to rewatch Avatar 1 in IMAX, I think. Maybe that's when I would get the appeal, or like see the real appreciation for the artistic value of how visually it looks like.
Yeah,
well, Avatar 1 will be back in theaters in September because they want people to go back and see it. And especially, again, for that audience that never experienced it, you can go and check it out before you go see the new one. So
I think film is a two-dimensional medium, and even the other thing is like our brains, our eyes, the way we see, it is in 2 dimensions. Even the way that we experience any image is in 2 dimensions. It's an illusion of depth that's caused by 2 cameras looking at 2 different perspectives at the same time, like orients us in space. But, if you put a picture here, both eyes are looking at it. And that's, it's not, I don't think it really I feel the same way about CGI. There's some CGI where it's like, if we construct this from 3 dimensions and you can probably animate it better, that's fine. But a 3D explosion on a 2D screen still looks 2D,
Yeah.
And sometimes
that's why Chris Nolan's films, right? They bought a plane because they figured out, well, it was too expensive and it actually looked better to blow up the actual plane rather than put this CGI
which one are you, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about how they got a jumbo jet and they crashed it into a real building in Tenet?
In Tenet.
In Tenet, or are you talking about in The Dark Knight Rises, where they actually had a cargo
Both.
plane with like another plane fuselage hanging? That was all done in real too.
Oh, the Dark Knight, the opening scene, right, with
Yes.
Bane. That
Yeah.
one. Okay. Well, I didn't know that was an actual thing. That's
That
incredible.
was done physically. It's still, to me, like that's one of the most impressive action set pieces I've seen any movie do in the last, because that level of filmmaking you don't see in Hollywood today. Like a lot of movies
Yeah.
don't go to that
And
insane level
I,
of a detail. Yeah.
you guys are gonna hate me, but I must bring up Star Wars. Like, come on. Like that's why the prequels are like the original series is standing out so much, because even though the special effects are so bad, that every set piece, every ship, every droid, everything just got you really feel the heart and soul that people put into that. So yeah, I'm a firm believer of harder work. I think it's a shortcut. CGI is a shortcut of in the filmmaking.
Yeah, and it doesn't always pay off. I think there's a lot of distraction from story these days, and that's why we watch things.
Yeah.
You know, it's every once in a while, yeah, it's if you can pull something off and really show a scene and some action that is brilliant, you know, like a Christopher Nolan type thing. Sure, that will enhance the story, but 3D doesn't enhance the experience for me.
But yeah, it would be interesting to hear someone defend 3D. I think we haven't met many people who enjoy 3D.
Well, maybe if you're watching this and you just love 3D, you wanna tell us that we're wrong. Yeah, I'll debate you.
I will defend
I'd
3D.
love to know that.
Dan,
Oh, there we go.
it's you.
No, because
Shocking.
no, I'm not. Okay, so I will say this 3D very quickly. So when 3D was initially introduced around, 3D was around when Avatar came out. It wasn't the first 3D movie, I don't think, but it was definitely like one of those movies that actually took 3D as a concept seriously. Like it was like James Cameron when he works on things, he works on things and he takes like his stuff seriously. He's not there to do something for the sake of making it a gimmick. He wants to do it because he wants to advance, obviously, the story for the storytelling purposes, but also he creates innovations that then are used across the industry, whether the pioneering liquid simulation CGI from Terminator 2 with how they did the what was his name, T-1000, is that what was the name of the Pat was who played him? Anyway, you remember the character I'm talking about, right? Like that was pioneering.
No, that was great. That was
in the Abyss, like he built like this physical huge tank, and the actors had to learn how to hold their breath underwater. It's like torture to work with him on movies because of how demanding he is of his actors. In the new Avatar movie, a lot of those actors who filmed this movie, they actually had to learn how to hold their breath for a long periods of time underwater because they were doing motion capture underwater that's never been done before, and then applying that to the what you see as totally animated CGI in the movie, in the new one. So when he did 3D, he did 3D the right way. Like he did 3D with two cameras rather than doing a post-product conversion in post, which is how most movies started to do it, and that's where the gimmicky part came in.
Do you guys remember Robert Rodriguez?
Yeah.
Do you remember Robert Rodriguez using it in all the Spy Kids and Lava Girl and Shark Boy?
Exactly, because like Andrew, you mentioned something, right? Like in the original Avatar, there's a scene where you have these little what did you call them? These
like dandelion pods.
Dandelion sort of pods, like just
seedlings.
Spores.
They were the Nanya, like the actual spirits of the tree.
Right. And that to me is like a better expression of 3D, where you're not banging them on the head with it because you have something flying at the screen, and it's just it's the difference between good psychological horror and the kind of jump scare heavy horror movie where one of them is very gimmicky, the other one's trying to tell you a story.
I think there's a lot of refining that needs to be done with 3D in general, and so we shouldn't abandon it. But I agree. If you could make it more subliminal, but effective in that way, then there'd be a reason for it. But it's not. It's like, is Avatar 3 going to be released in the metaverse, and are we all going to be wearing,
I don't think James Cameron rolls like that. I don't think that would be his intention.
But like
I mean,
that's about the biggest justification for 3D I could see is if you're gonna do 3D and allow us to look around and behind us in the world so that we can feel and experience every scene, but then that would distract from the story as well.
not necessarily. When we're shooting the crime done, about to, I don't know if you remember, we've met a couple of filmmakers from Canada who did their documentary in VR, and they commented how that only enhanced on the whole experience, on really engaging with the story, because they were you were able to really connect with them and stuff. So I disagree.
Well, they made it,
argument.
so how did people watching it feel about it?
But who do you think it's okay? Let's call something. So who do you think is going to be first to introduce VR in their films? Like, which one of the big directors? Chris Nolan, James Cameron?
Probably more likely James Cameron, because Christopher Nolan's much more of a traditionalist. Like, he's going to want to
exactly
always. He's still shooting on film. I mean, there's so few directors today who still shoot on film simply because they can, and because studios just don't let you because it's so expensive. Yeah. Like, you're adding a whole lot of extra layers to production and like the dailies but yeah, no, I think it would be more. Cameron has that pioneering attitude that leans into the technology side of the tech side of film production more. So
as you're saying that, I'm thinking about just how for a while people were talking about the idea that gaming would take over movies, and I never bought that because you can have games that have a really compelling narrative, and you can watch them and you can look around and do all that stuff. But generally, when we're being told a story, whether it's across a table or we're watching a movie, it's not an active experience. It's a passive experience.
It's
and
a passive.
We want to be, we don't necessarily want to participate in the media unless we have the energy to do it. But like TV, movies, it's something to sit back and, let your body rest and let somebody else sort of control your imagination for a little bit.
With the game, it's not even as much as the actual control of the story unfolding that you have in your hands. Is also, you don't need to kind of attach yourself to the outcome of the game. To the outcome of the film as much as you're in a game. People tend to analyze their capabilities as human based on how good they are in some games. Whereas film is just like, as you said, it's just like it's a spectacle. That's how it was designed. And in my opinion, that's how we should keep it.
Even if we go into the metaverse, if that becomes how, I can't imagine that everybody's going to stop watching movies. Like, you'll sit in a virtual living room and watch a movie. I really don't think that it would go away. There's just, we would see fewer movies and TV shows getting made if that were the case. And they're still huge for driving profits. They're still, everybody's hungry for more content.
Exactly. We're producing so much more.
It's all two-dimensional. Like I've been saying, if you're some tech developer, I would like to see horizontal tabletop televisions that could be like stages. And that would be a good use of 3D. Do that so that we can see a scene in 3 dimensions. That would be novel. But in terms of like taking the 2D experience and then like just having it go up to about here, that doesn't help me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of not making it a gimmick, as long as you don't make it a gimmick, I think if you use it as a tool in your toolbox to enhance your storytelling, 3D is just as much of an effective tool as anything else. I look at it as, but it's like you do use 3D the way you use a camera dolly. I'm sure you've seen movies where there's way too many dolly shots to count, or where they use shaky cam ineffectively. You know?
But camera dolly has them more of an effect to me.
No, I'm not saying.
The sense of depth gives you so
I'm
much
just saying
more
they're tools. I'm saying that these are both tools. It's what we usually we start to associate. We're ragging on 3D almost as if inherently 3D is not a good thing. I think 3D is a good thing when used in the right, context. I don't think every movie needs to be 3D. I don't think every movie's story leans like into it. Not every movie can take advantage of a 3D presentation as well as some movies might be able to. So I think it should be used more selectively, and it won't, I don't think, ever be like this mainstream format like they tried to make it for so long. I think it has limited application, and in those contexts, when it's done well, like what James Cameron did with Avatar, it works.
And actually, I remember for a little bit they were trying to make curved televisions a thing.
That was because the idea was like you get a big enough TV and it then curves with the curvature of your eye. I was working at Best Buy at that time, so we had all the whole how do you pitch it to customers and how do you like get them to buy the TV. And
it still is. That's the thing. It's still the thing. And
I think it only works when it's like bigger sizes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
like that, it has to be big enough.
That would be a way to make the to increase the vanishing point, so that if you did turn your head a little bit, you could still be getting information on the peripherals.
Yeah. There's a Screen X format. Have you guys seen, like, Regal has a Screen X format where you can go and they've got like screens almost like going onto your periphery and above and below the usual picture area.
Yeah,
and
I've seen that.
It's meant to sort of it's like a gimmicky way to extend, like, because it's not adding any extra footage. It's just more or less tiling the footage around.
Yeah, right. So like, and again, it's like books. We still have books. Books are books. We don't like TV.
Well, some of us have Kindle.
Even so, it's two dimensions, and you're looking at it, and we haven't changed the medium. I think 3D might be part of a different medium.
I think it's well, not again, but like here's I think what it ultimately boils down to. It's all about immersing your audience into the story. There's many ways to do that. I think a two-dimensional movie being watched on an iPhone, if it is the right kind of movie, can immerse you just as much as anything you can go to an IMAX theater to watch. And you shouldn't need, like, somebody could make a really good short film and you're watching it on your iPhone with your earbuds on and you're just as immersed into it because you're in the story, you've suspended your disbelief, and you might be way less interested in going while you're sitting in an IMAX theater blacked out and all you're looking at and hearing is that movie. It's all about like connecting with your audience. So I think again, these are all tools and it's just different methods of presentation. So what ultimately matters is the story, how good of a story you're telling and how effective of a job you're doing telling that story.
I agree.
Amen.
Yeah.
What do you think? Are we ready for the real show?
Hey, before we do this, I know Roland's not here, but maybe this will make it even better because he isn't here. I do have 2 comments of the week, and I wanted to save them for when he was here, but I hope, maybe he watches this and we'll just gauge his reaction that way. Or maybe we'll put him back up when he's back with us. But you guys want to go through those real quick? Because there was some fun stuff. So Mags, you can take a stab at the first one, and then Andrew, you can take a stab at the second one.
Okay.
Alrighty.
All right. Here's the first one. We got some. we got some usual suspects chiming in our comments.
Comment of the week by Sherry Moncherry Dower, I think. Awesome job. really well done explaining the movie with the highs and lows. Amazing.
Yep,
Good
that was
job,
on
Roland.
Instagram. That's.
You did well.
I'm pretty
Seems
sure
like
that's
Roland's
Mama
got a
Underground.
fan.
That's.
I mean, can we talk about that video? The video is amazing.
It is a
Like,
good
He
video.
really
It's done
poured
really
his
well.
heart and soul. It's really good.
Stylized movie reviews. There's something new. There's somebody
something new.
innovating. That's good.
That was really actually was. I love how unexpected some of the like my favorite part comes in at 2 minutes 10 seconds into the video, and I just the
I
first
love
time
how
I
you
watched
remember.
it, I was because I
Just
memorized it.
time's up.
Of course I have, because these kind of things matter. You got to pay attention. Because I'm looking at like what
Yeah.
the average view duration is on YouTube, and I'm like, are people watching it up to this? And it's like way past that. So I'm like, okay, people are watching it and at least seeing, because that's the best part of the video for me. Like when the first time I saw it, I was just like, holy crap, what the hell? Like, because you see it like the first time you see it go down, you're like, wait, where is this? What, oh no, okay, I guess. I just hope there, because I don't know whose house it is in the background, and I hope if it wasn't, if it's not Roland's, like somebody's not all of a sudden like looking through their
Yeah,
window.
let's
'Cause
hope.
it looks like the house from Knives Out. They're like somebody's like, oh shit, I just saw a kid get nabbed or grabbed or whatever.
Yeah.
That was.
No, that was good. Like, well executed.
Okay, here's another.
What's
So
the
this is
second
the
one?
second one. Andrew, you could take a crack at this one. This is from this is a comment. I won't tell this, and it comes from an unknown platform, not YouTube or anywhere else like that. And apparently, a couple of people wrote into Roland with the question that he addressed in this video, and then they had a comment to make about it after watching the video.
Let's take a look. Comment of the week. Chris and Charlie, longtime listeners, first-time callers, took your advice on getting a prairie dog. Worked out so well. We bring him up in conversations. Immediate hires on the spot. Our lives as underpaid, overworked set PAs have been changed forever. Might even qualify for insurance soon. FML. Anyways, the dog stopped Mags from stealing our money. Roland, you're not just a guy in a beanie with a green screen behind him. You're a life-changing guru. We love you, Tolan. Keep up the great work. Great. What a good dude.
Yep, that's from that broke college grads video. Roland basically like spent the video answering questions from Chris and Charlie, so Chris and Charlie had some feedback for Roland after watching the video.
Well, it sounds like post-college
Good on
life
him.
is working out for them. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Join the adulthood. That's going to be fun.
I just Max, I saw the look on your face change with that line. I'm sorry.
It's just, I don't want to go back to this. I expressed my opinion on that.
Sorry. I wasn't sure how that was gonna come across. So that was the one controversial part of that whole comment of the week. But
Oh, good.
On that note, let's go to the show.
Hello, boys! I'm back!
Thinking.
It's not happening with him.
It's a matter of life and death.
I'll tell you what's the matter with life and death. That beautiful lady over there. Hey, baby, check out the gun show going on over here. Boom, boom, firepower. Where are they?
Killing is making a choice.
Hasta la vista, baby.
That's not how the Force works.
My mom always said,
life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
It's oh so curious. We are three curious minds. Look at us, back to the old three! It's me, Andrew Frankel, and Dan, and Mags, and we're talking about media and movies, and boy, it's gonna be a good show today. I can just feel it. How is everybody?
I thought you froze there, and then the audio was on loop.
Yeah.
Oh, like, whoa.
Yeah, no, I'm just a glitch of a human being.
That was a lot.
So good, we're all happy. Today's a good day. It's July 3rd. Almost, we are 24 hours away from celebrating the independence of America, which I'm hyped about because I love America, and I live in it. So, what are we talking about today?
Is it like a barbecue time for 4th of July?
That's part of it.
What do you guys normally do? And someone's shouting somewhere, by the way.
Somewhere somebody's shouting.
You guys can, I muted myself. You guys can hear that, right?
We can hear that. We can hear everything.
I can hear it.
All right, you can't hear it now. Okay, yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay. So, rundown. What's happening today?
So let's do the rundown.
Wait, who's doing the rundown? Who did we decide? I just want to make sure we got that covered.
I think it was me.
Yeah. Mags, give us the rundown.
So we start with some quick hits. We had Brian do them this week, which went out nicely. Then we're going to review the last 2 episodes of Stranger Things, Volume 2. Then we're going to have Andrew take us to Voice Actor Reacts. Then we're going to have a July movie preview. We're going to look at Thor after that too. So yeah, a lot of July releases. Well, we're at the start of the month, so let's kind of talk about what's worth seeing and what's not. But yeah, meanwhile, Brian, what happened this week? No?
I was just going to say, you mentioned Julia Roberts. There's a new trailer that dropped this week with Julia Roberts and George Clooney. They're working on a new movie together. I think it's for Netflix.
I saw that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It looks cute. It's about a divorced couple that bumps into each other on the plane on the way to their daughter's ill-advised wedding to a family in another country. It's
a midlife crisis type of movie for them.
I don't know. It's a romantic comedy, and it's kind of like every child of divorce's fantasy, where like the parents might get back together, and in the meantime they're like pulling pranks or like stabbing each other in the back because they think they're going to work together to break the marriage up before it happens, but they're always throwing each other under the bus. It looks lighthearted and fun and silly and a little different. You know, it would have to be for both of them to sign on. What's it called? Do we know? We're just going to talk about it.
I think I made a note of it. I take notes down throughout the week. Nope. Actually, I did not write that one down.
That just reminds me of Diane Keaton and like Jack Nicholson, just like having their great careers and making those awesome films, and then yeah.
The movie is called Ticket to Paradise with George Clooney and Julia Roberts. It's it looks light and family oriented if you're into that kind of thing. So with that, what do you say? Would you like to see what Brian's got in store for us this week?
Sure.
Okie dokie, Brian, take it away.
What's up, guys? It's time for some quick hits now. I'm Brian Jennings, and let's get into it. First up, Top Gun Maverick became the year's first billion-dollar movie at the box office. It is also the only movie to have crossed $500 million at the North American box office in 2022. So have you felt the need for speed yet? I certainly have not. I haven't seen the movie yet. Okay, next up, Howard Stern apparently let some Marvel news slip during a commercial break on his show when the mics were left hot. He might be set to appear in an upcoming MCU film featuring Doctor Doom. Do you believe him? I don't know if I do. Was this just a PR stunt by Stern? Possibly. Tell us in the comments below. Some casting news now. James Bond producer Barbara Broccoli was asked this week about who is in consideration to take on the next title of 007. Her answer? No one. At least not yet. She explained the character is currently being reinvented for its next iteration, and we're at least 2 years away from cameras rolling on Bond 26. Now some A24 news. Dave Franco, Katie O'Brien, Ed Harris, and Jenna Malone have joined Kristen Stewart in the upcoming film, Love Lies Bleeding. Described as a romance fueled by ego, desire, and the American dream. Sounds ravishing. Speaking of ensemble cast, Searchlight Pictures dropped the first trailer this week for its upcoming Whodunit film. See how they run. Starring Sam Rockwell, Saoirse Ronan, Adrian Brody, holy names, Ruth Wilson, Reese Shearsmith, Harris Dickinson, and David Oyelowo. And the film is set for a fall release this year. And lastly, Cameron Diaz is back. The actress is coming out of retirement to join Jamie Foxx in Netflix's upcoming action comedy, Back in Action. Are you excited? Let us know in the comments below. So those are the quick hits for this week, but before I let you go, remember to join us for live episodes of Oh So Curious every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We talk movies, TV, streaming, music, and existential philosophies of life. So join us in the fun. We look forward to having you be a part of our movie fan community. Take care now.
Okay, so we waited a month between the last episodes of Stranger Things and these 2 concluding episodes, which totaled about 4 hours of watch time. I watched it, and it was a lot. It was a commitment, I will say. You have to commit to watching these.
Did you? I didn't think I would, and I actually tried super hard for a long time, but eventually, I had to look at the how much time is left, especially when I got to episode 9, like the finale episode. It's like 2.5. Yeah. It's 2.5 hours. I mean, they're both movies, 1.5 hours, 2.5 hours, and I'm not saying I was looking at the clock simply because I was bored. I actually waited until it was one of those scenes when they were just sitting around and talking. Yeah. But the simple fact that I think there was so much happening in 2.5 hours, but there were still, I just felt like the flow of the show, it could have been tighter. I think you've mentioned this before.
Yeah. I mean, as I was watching it, I know previously I had said these scenes, these cuts didn't have to be half as long as they are. And they really, it's like they're trying to break a record for longest streaming duration and audience retention. But my gosh, as I was watching this, I just thought how long do we really need to establish this, the feet or the shoulders? It didn't add anything. I think there was a lot of, you could have wrapped this up in 20 minutes and they chose to do it in 4 hours.
That's okay. So I think for the first time throughout the season, what I started to realize was this show, Volume 1, I thought every episode had enough going on that it was deserved the runtime. Yeah. There was very few moments where I thought things were dragging. In this, last 2 episodes, I felt like there were times where legitimately they could have, I don't know, and I think episode 9 probably taken 15, 20, even 30 minutes out and would not have lost much. Because like you said, there were shots where they were just, I'm like, I get it. We have seen this guy 20,000 times before. Do we really need to build it up again? At times it worked, to establish the drama and everything else. But then there were other times where I just thought it was dragging a little bit. We were like, okay, we've seen this. We know what's going on. Let's kind of...
The Master of Puppets scene was cool as for any metalhead, anybody who's a Metallica fan. Like, yeah,
I love
yes.
it. Yeah, no, that was fun. Yeah.
But it added nothing. It added nothing. It was really
I thought
just,
they would do it better. I felt like yeah.
It's like you could have had a lot more bats. You could have had some real dramas, like a real light show to make it feel like a concert experience, to make it, metal. But it ended up just sort of being a guitar solo in the middle of a show.
I'm like, okay, when it started, I was like, okay, I like it. Let's go. And then I think this is where maybe a little bit of the editing had an issue, because I felt like the show's narrative, how do I put this? So there was so much going on at this point in the episode that they just didn't have enough he gets going with his guitar solo, and then they're cutting around to like the three other things that are happening at the same time. And
they don't really establish why he needs to be playing guitar at all.
Come to think of it, I'm like, obviously it was to get people their attention, right? Like that's the idea. I'm assuming
because I know like there's a reason that we hear the Kate Bush song over and over and over and over and over again. It's her favorite song, and that's what keeps the demons away. Fine. Why okay, I like Master of Puppets, that'll keep the demons away. But now I have to play it? It seems sort of like an opportunistic cash grab. Get Master of Puppets up in the charts.
It was like whatever song they had to. They could have done a lot of other things. It was in the trailers for like even when they first initially teased season 4. So
was it?
I think so, because that's the first time we saw the guitar solo part. It wasn't when they had it in this volume 2 trailer, but they also had it well before then. I'm pretty sure it was in the initial season 4 teaser. Like it was one of those. It was basically like this big montage, and then one of the shots was him riffing on the guitar, and they were like, "Oh, volume 1 came out. He's obviously not doing it there." So they were like, "He must be doing it in volume 2." And so people were waiting for that for a long time. So I think that was one of those moments. It's definitely visually is great. I just think it didn't land as well, primarily because they had so much happening that they couldn't. Which is weird, because you're like, if you have 2.5 hours, how could you end up in a situation where you just didn't have enough time to spend with a moment like that? It's the first time they did the Kate Bush song, there was like the narrative focus was there to like hang with that moment. And I felt like in this episode, they simultaneously had too much going on, but then at times not enough going on. Like there were the slow moments of the show made you look away, whereas in volume 1 I think there was never a slow moment when you looked away. There were still some great character moments, like when Hopper and what's the name of the, I'm forgetting Winona Ryder's character's name.
Winona Ryder's character.
Oh,
I don't know.
Well, Hopper and then and the Winona Ryder's character.
Ms. Byers?
Is it
Byers? Is it
something Byers?
That's her last name, right?
That is her last name.
Ms. Byers.
I forget what her first name is. You know what? Let me look it up. It's gonna bother me.
All right.
I'm gonna type in Joyce. Yeah, that's it. Joyce. Look at that, Google. Byers. Joyce and Hopper, when they're in that warehouse or that church that is a stash for the Russian smuggler in Russia, and they have this moment where she sees like the scars on his back, and they're just sort of, the
sexual tension is rising.
Have a moment with each other, like that was built well. I think that was one of the more emotional, because like that relationship has progressed, I think, at a more natural pace than some of the other relationships in the show.
It was nice to see the adults get a moment of romance and reconciliation. Yeah, let's talk about some more of the plot details here, just while we're at it. So, a big spoiler is that Eddie dies.
Yep. Oh, wait, hold on. I didn't even put up this. Did we? I
Should we
don't know
take
if we put up the spoiler warning. Uh-oh.
Let's take two.
Spoiler warning if you haven't seen the show yet.
If you haven't seen
this is the after show. So technically you should have seen the show before you came to see this.
This is your fault.
Okay. Eddie dies. Eddie dies.
What? So, yeah, Eddie dies. And I was thinking, honestly, they brought this character in this season. It would have been the better move to kill anybody else who's been here for a couple of seasons. The emotional impact would have been stronger, and it would have changed the dynamic of everything.
They basically almost killed off Max. Max is because at the end there's that scene where Elle is trying to get in her mind and see where she is, and when she gets inside, Max is nowhere to be found, and it's, to me, that's symbolically a hint that maybe she's actually brain dead, she's gone. I don't know. Maybe they'll find a way to her spirit will come back. Because I
imagine what they're gonna do is they'll have her in the upside down, and so she'll be able to talk to Elle there, and maybe they could. There's a whole thing about in mythology of just people who lose sight or lose certain senses or abilities gain other ones. So it would be a good opportunity to exercise that kind of, mythic tradition.
Yeah, I could see that. I thought her character actually, talking about Max, I thought her character was given a lot more to do. Well, let's see. So in the last season, season 3, where they introduced her, they gave her a lot to do. But I think in this season, they gave her, especially as an actor, a lot more weight to carry. I hope, in terms of what her character was meant to get across, especially that scene where she's sitting and basically goading Vecna to come and take her, and you start to see her finally the kind of thing that her therapist at school would have wanted to have her say out loud in front of her and then talk it through. She's sitting there and saying all of that stuff, and then the seamless transition from all of a sudden why am I forgetting the kid's name? Her boyfriend. It's not Mike. It's not Dustin. The basketball player kid. Anyway, the point is he starts to.
We've watched the show, I promise.
I know. We've all seen the show. I'm bad with character names. I literally am. I'm like Joyce Byers. She's one of the faces of the show. Anyway, so. She's confessing all of these dark secrets, the deepest, darkest things in her mind, how she felt guilty for almost wanting Billy to die. Although the way she screamed out for Billy in the season 3 finale, it sounded like maybe she was exaggerating a little bit. Maybe she did.
Yeah. Well, she was trying to bait Vecna over, right?
Right. But the point is how seamlessly it transitions into the nightmare world, the inside her head, and then we cut to her eyes going completely blank, and and you see what her boyfriend again, who's trying to
Lucas
get her back. Again, that's gonna bother me how I don't remember his name.
His name's Lucas.
Lucas. God, you think I would know every single one of those core 4 guys' name?
They
probably
don't really
do it.
Honestly, they don't do a great job at establishing all of the the real relationship. They all just sort of feel like updated Goonies characters in a way, and they turn Will. They create a whole love arc and a whole coming to terms with his sexuality, but never saying it explicitly in the show. There's that whole arc there. There's a lot of the speeches in these last couple episodes were just.
I felt a little uncomfortable about that. They were building up for a payoff with Will's character that never happened. It's sort of I sort of get like maybe their response to that would be that they leaned into, oh, and you know, if this was happening in real life, you wouldn't all of a sudden get a payoff straight away. They're playing the long game with this character. But
honestly, what I noticed is that with both of the, both of the gay characters, they both are pining for these friends that they have, and they both end up saying, "You just be friends," you know, and like, I'll just admire you from afar. They're both sort of fated to, like, forfeit their feelings and just watch their heterosexual friend be happy.
Although if you watched all the well, Maya Hawke's character, what's her name? Ethan Hawke's daughter, by the way, Maya Hawke. She plays
Robin.
Steve's friend, right?
Robin,
yes. Again, remember the actor's name, but not the character. So Robin, and by the end of the last episode, she's sort of, you know, got her foot in the door with her love interest, right?
Well, no, I got the feeling that she was also just sort of resigning herself back to friendship from that scene.
I got the feeling that was more like, I wouldn't say first base, but it's a start, you know? It's sort of...
Yeah, it's like they didn't totally commit to anything there. Will doesn't have any other love interest.
Well, not Will. I'm talking about Robin. I really thought that was like a meet cute moment there.
Well, they met. They know each other. They talked. They were friends. And I didn't get the sense that they were going to be anything other than friends.
Well, what gave me the sense, the opposite of what you're saying, is because she starts to like what her love interest starts to go like, my brain just starts running at 100 miles per hour, and then words just start coming out, and I don't know how to stop, which was almost like literally mirrored the dialogue that Robin like said like at some point either in this season or the season before. And so that mirroring of that those lines of dialogue to me, and then how they're like exchanging glances and all that, I was like, okay, so they're not committing to this like being a thing, but they're saying this is where it's going.
That's what I'm saying, is they didn't commit to it, and the feeling that I got from it was the opposite. It seemed like, oh, well, maybe you'll just have a lot in common in that case. Because her whole story up to that point is, I just dumped my boyfriend, like we just broke up.
Right.
So breaking up with a boyfriend is not, you know, proclaiming your love for another person.
That is true. Yeah, I could definitely see they use this as like a teaser for maybe this becomes a thing down the road, but more likely what is going to happen is when we get on to the next season, Robin is probably still, you know, she's still single, ready to mingle, if you will, and hasn't really settled into a relationship. And yeah, I can definitely see that. I feel like this was a teaser for something they're not going to pay off, or maybe the ultimate payoff is one, you know, maybe Rob. I don't know who's going to die in the next season. I feel like the body count should have been higher for this season.
I agree.
The way the writers
I've been waiting for Dustin to die, and he didn't. So
they clearly saved the core. It's almost like I felt like this felt like Avengers Infinity War, where they killed off a lot of the characters they'd introduced in the successive seasons, whereas the original cast is largely intact, because the core group of characters from the very first season will be largely the focus of the final season, and maybe they'll bring back some of those other characters, because obviously another spoiler, Billy comes back at least within the mind dimension of was it Max or Vecna, whoever.
They're all in each other's minds by that point.
There was a little bit of Inception. They even make a reference, dream within a dream. Whoa. Like, I love the stoner dude. That is, by the way, if there's one thing I will remember about this season the most, is that stoner surfer boy pizza guy. Because that was some of the most entertaining parts of the whole show, is whenever he's on screen and doing his thing. Even the part where in volume 1 he walks into, they go to Dustin's girlfriend's house, and he's completely infatuated with the babysitter, and the way he's pining after her, that was some of the most entertaining stuff of the entire season. And then when they in this, I think it was Papa episode 8, where they go to the Surfer Boy Pizza in whatever state they were in, and he the way they pitch him, like, we're not asking you to do it for free, and here's a rolled up stick, and go out there and go to the wonderland of whatever, and while we commandeer whatever the word is, commandeer your restaurant. I'm like, there's like a suspension of disbelief that you need for those scenes to work, and the fact that they made that work.
So the suspension of disbelief is another thing, because it's like the way that they figure things out and the way they piece things together, it's really like some of those bad like 70s detective things where it's like, well, if you spell this backwards, it's a clue toward another thing that vaguely references something else, and that's why everything fits together. And it's like, I don't know.
That's the thing. This you have to sort of, and this show tries to, in this season especially, because of they had 15 hours of TV within this one season, which is more than probably the last 2 seasons combined or something like that. And to fill that space, I think there was a little bit of unevenness in the overall tone of the show, where sometimes it felt incredibly gritty, grounded, like especially like, for example, the parts where you see Hopper in the Russian prison, right? Like that, some of that
stuff is so which grueling. I did not need at all.
And I was really hoping, by the way, that thing was going to get paid off in a more meaningful. It was meaningful to a degree, but it was almost like, it's like the fact that they don't physically meet up until after the situation is being resolved.
That's really the thing. They spread this out over a month, and they said, we're going to have 4 hours for you to watch at the end of this month. And I thought maybe they'll meet up faster, and that would change up a lot of the dynamics that we've been seeing for the whole season. And we really don't see that until the last 10 minutes of the last episode.
I really thought they would intertwine their stories a bit more, and it almost felt a little like attached, like toward, because they were like, oh, they go on this really cool adventure, but then we do have to tie it into the main story somehow. So, we don't have to. We could just, the mind flayers over here, like the particles going into the monsters. We don't have to go to the States. We can try to help from here, because we can't get a chopper, which they eventually did get a chopper to like get them to the States anyway, right? But not in time.
There's a lot in terms of the pacing. There's a lot of we can't do that. Oh wait, we can do that. Is it going to work? I don't think so. It works. Like, we didn't need the whole I don't think so phase.
The same situation applied to even Elle and the Bayer kids and Mike, because those guys were like 2,000 miles away, and then they were like, oh, remote connection. This is how we can help. And then basically all they did for the last 30 minutes of that was hold Elle down while Elle was in the mind and of Max and stuff. So,
and they leave the whole series pretty open-ended. What we know so far about the next season is these kids, these actors, have aged way more than the characters have. And the plan is to do a bit of a time jump. And so they don't really explicitly say what this big foreboding field of gray weeds and flowers and stormy weather is. We don't know what that's going to be. We just know this isn't the end. There's still plenty to figure out in terms of Max's arc and whether or not she's going to recover or what that recovery will look like. But the way that they do the time jump is going to be tricky, because it'll be a different part of the 80s. Might even be the 90s. Who knows?
Well, they're in 80, what is it, 84 or 86? Is it 80? I think it's 86. Because 84 is like the flashback stuff when they go to the snowball, which was like last. I think it's meant to be 86 where they are now. So they still have some runway to still stay in the 80s if they wanted to. But depends on how big of a time jump it is.
You know what? I think it would be a good move. I also think it would be popular if they ended up in 91, 92.
Oh, yeah.
You have, especially, because I know Netflix is the one bringing back that 90s show, right?
I think it's Netflix. You might be right.
So
I'm not 100% sure, but
we've been in the nostalgic 80s for a good few years now. I think the nostalgic 90s are kind of coming back, and they did a good job.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, but don't you think that unless they get to like 1995, that you wouldn't get true 90s? Because it's most every decade, like at the start of the decade, it's still sort of, you get a lot of spillover from the previous decade, like 2001, 2002, 2003. If you go back and look at that, it would look more like the 90s than it would look like 2000s that you would remember as like 2007 or 8. So I'm thinking, unless they get into mid 90s.
What I will say, maybe, but what I'll say is that like, in the space of 2 years in the 80s, they've changed people's hair a lot. They've shown other pop culture items and artifacts that would have shown up. So, there's a lot to work with in any year, but they have a whole decade to work with. I'm not telling them it has to be 91 or 92.
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this much. I did grow a certain infatuation for the babysitter in this episode, or in this season. God. And I was a little disappointed that he didn't get to do more in the final episode of the show.
Yeah.
Of the season.
Also, you know what?
He just threw a Molotov cocktail. That's all he did. That mattered in that episode. I was like, the dude had an axe. Gotta get into the action, man. Like, gotta do more. And then Nancy got her moment. I'm not saying that's not a good thing. I just wish that Steve got to do a little more work.
I like Steve, and maybe this is a way to wrap, but I don't buy the Natalie, what is it?
Jonathan?
The Nancy Jonathan romance. I don't buy that at all.
It's in a weird spot, right? Like
he's so weird and introverted and just like fidgety. And
although I do have a certain level of admiration for his motivation. Like, I think when he says this in volume 1 at some point when he's talking to, I don't know who he's talking to specifically, is one of the buyer's kids. Well, there's only one other buyer kid and then Mike or whatever. But he's saying that he's going to go to college in California because he wants to stay with his family, take care of them, versus go off to, Emerson with Nancy. Yeah. That to me is something that I was like, that's a noble cause that he's going after, that he wants to take care of his family, as with Joyce and everything. But that was before Hopper came back, so I'm assuming things will probably adjust now. They might, who knows where this is gonna go. But there is like a weird, because when you follow back to season 1, totally makes sense how all of that came together. I just don't think they've followed it up as well as they maybe should have.
Yeah, and like he hasn't had much of an arc. He went from being like, angsty teen whose brother is missing and is like he's got too much on his mind, to just a guy who is mostly stoned for this season.
Well, even last season, even in season 3, he didn't get to do as much because it's almost like they had very specific character goals in mind for him in the first season, and they accomplished exactly that. Like, he was the underdog guy who was never gonna be in the picture with a girl that's way you could say like out of his league, if you will, but then he like earns his way into that. But then since that first season, I feel like he hasn't had nearly as much to do, and I don't know where they're taking his character.
Both buyers' kids don't do much for the show. They're kind of irrelevant characters. They could have killed off Will in the first season, and it would have been just sort of that thing of like,
well, he was a bigger part of
that would be the thing that drew those kids closer together and made the friendship as strong as it was. That happens.
Yeah. Well, he was a bigger part of what was it, season 2 or 3, where he's basically ends up in the Upside Down. Well, that was the first season. Though he ended up in the Upside Down. Yeah. But I thought he had a bigger role to play. He did sort of. It feels shoehorned in a little bit.
Yeah.
You are right. He does feel a little shoehorned in, especially at this point, especially in this season. I feel like he was in the background most of the time, and then anything to set up with his character never got paid off, and you're sort of just left wanting either like do something with that or get rid of the character. That's when they must have, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that they must have something in mind with the last season, especially because, again, it seems like they're pining for that, bring the original crew back together for one last hurrah, and they're going to need that. Because, like, Billy was that big character they introduced in season 3 to kill him off at the end. to help build up another set of characters, which you then continue with. And it feels like Eddie was that character in this season.
Yeah.
And then last
again,
season is where
I
they're
think
saving those big core character deaths for.
that is one thing I did like about Game of Thrones, is that they didn't care if you had grown attached to a character. They could die at any time. And it changed the dynamic and it changed the focus of the show. And in a sense, you end up, you have some basic people who've been there from the beginning to the end, but you get episodes that are about brand new characters sometimes.
Yeah.
And you're just, that's more the nature of life, that some people, your core group stays the same, but others, they come and they go, and the dynamics of your life change. That would have been a more organic way to follow the trajectory of the show, but again, it's a show and it's doing very well. It's popular.
I have a feeling some of this is also because they have spin-offs in mind and continuations of stories and stuff.
Yeah.
So that might be motivating why they're keeping some of these characters alive, and they won't even die at the end of the final season of the show. That's probably part of it. I mean, that didn't stop Game of Thrones from killing off half the people that you started off with in the beginning.
I know.
I mean, and they're doing so many spin-offs now. I mean, so I guess you could say you can have your cake and eat it too. They're just not going in that direction, what Game of Thrones did. It's also because I think this show, if you look at the original Bible for the show when they were pitching this, the pitching Bible, the original idea the Duffer Brothers had for season 2 was so different from, they wanted to go in a completely different direction than continue the story of the first season, whereas in reality what they ended up doing. Well, they didn't have something so definitive, but what they wanted to do was go in a more explore, because it was called at the time Montauk, like it was based, that was meant to be the name of the show. It wasn't meant to be Hawkins or anything. It was meant to be based more in, I think, like there's an island in the Long Island Sound.
Montauk, yeah.
Very different. And they wanted to go in a more sci-fi heavy, different sort of direction, get away from creature horror. But then I think in reality, they ended up they stayed much more linear in terms of what season 1 was about. And the Upside Down has been the focus of the primary antagonistic force in the show throughout. Whereas the original pitch was, after season 1, the Upside Down wasn't going to be so much of a force. It was vague, because when you pitch a show, you're just mostly focused on fleshing out season 1. But the original direction that they had in mind as writers was very different. But ultimately, it is also determined by Netflix picks up the show after getting denied by so many other outlets. The streaming network or whoever is the one financing your show gets to have some say in that. And obviously, I think, the Upside Down has inspired so much mythology since. So I don't know. Maybe it worked out for the better. Who knows?
Maybe.
We will never know.
I know. I got a totally different idea of what the Upside Down even was. I lost you.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Sorry about that. I'll be right back.
He's in the Upside Down. That's what it looks like.
I am in the Upside Down. That is true.
I got the impression when I first watched the first season of Stranger Things that the Upside Down was just that black place, where Eleven shows up, and she could listen to Russians having conversations, and they had them on the phone in the Upside Down, and I was like, maybe the Upside Down is where people with psychic abilities communicate. And I was totally on board for that to be what it was. And I didn't even think the show was going to have anything to do with monsters. And I was like, that's compelling enough for me. And that ended up not being anywhere close to what it was. In any case, how did you feel about this? Let us know in the comments. If you watched it and you thought it didn't drag, let us know. If you had some issues, if you bought a Hellfire Club shirt or something, let us know. It's popular for a reason. So if you loved it, let us know. Hang out with us. Follow us. We're on all the websites, Instagram, Twitter. Why am I blanking on the... Okay.
Facebook?
Anyway.
Facebook, Twitch.
Facebook and Twitch.
We have a website.
We have a website. Oh my gosh.
We have a website.
We're such a together production. and we're all over the place. So
Yes.
support us in our efforts to bring you entertaining content.
Yeah. Like the show.
Every day.
You know? So well put together, but so all over the place. Stranger Things.
Whew. Okay, what's next?
And now, a voice actor reacts to Minions: Rise of Gru.
I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking, hey, how much do you really have to say about Minions? A lot. This has a stacked cast. We got Steve Carell, Russell Brand, Taraji P. Henson. We have Alan Arkin, who did a wonderful job. The cast came to play in this movie. I will say that. The style of voice acting in these movies is totally different from Pixar. And I need to draw a distinction between that because the animation is also very different. We just visually, all of these characters are caricatures. They got big noses and exaggerated hair and they're cartoons. It's really nice to see cartoons that are cartoons. In Pixar, we all happen to have the same face and the same emotions, and we're all just sensible people. And, I love when people aren't sensible in cartoons. It's great. Now, other things that we don't see a whole lot, there's been a real trend in, the conversational, not cartoony sound. But also, almost any time you see a kid in a cartoon, it's a kid voiced by a kid. And so the performance is a kid's performance. They opted to have Steve Carell play young Gru.
I am pretty despicable.
I'm pretty sure listening to it that they pitch shifted his voice a little bit. Because I don't think he was doing this the whole time. Maybe he was. And Steve Carell, if you were doing that thank you. Thank you for bringing silly voices back to animation. Because Gru was really the first exaggerated voice we had for a long time. He came out with this, what I want to say is Ukrainian, Russian, it's hard to place it exactly, accent, way over the top, this big old nose. It was totally different from anything Pixar had given us, Little bone to pick here, his mom is played by Julie Andrews. Wonderful actress, Julie Andrews. But casting people. The accent should match. That's all I'm gonna say. She did fine, but there's a guilty part of me that says, I wanted Julie Andrews to do a big over-the-top accent. She didn't do it. All right. So, having said that, the movie is called Minions. Minions: Rise of Gru. And it's about the Minions. Pierre Coffin, I want to say. It looks like there's a big old screen. It says Pierre, and as in America, we would just say Coffin. Pierre Coffin. It's probably Coffin. I don't know. I don't speak French. But the guy is really a brilliant voice actor because when we're voice acting, we have the script right in front of us. They tell us what emotions and what the scene is about. They tell us what to do. And we say, well, how would this character do all of that? Pierre is using an amalgamation of a bunch of different languages, a lot of gibberish, and yet is somehow able to convey everything perfectly through these nonsense sentences. There are just some sounds that these minions make. They all have different attitudes. There's at least four if you count Otto, right? 4. And then they all have these clones, but there's different personalities that he communicates with all of these different minions.
For smoochy smoochy?
Using gibberish and French and Spanish and, kid speak or whatever you want to call it. Minionish. We're inventing languages. That's what we do. We're voice actors. That takes some serious skill. Any voice actor who is told you don't get to use real words, you have to make this convincing. You have to compel us. We need to feel something for this character, but you're not allowed to talk. Sometimes they give us a little bit of Spanish, which got laughs in the audience. A lot of laughs every time we got some full-on Spanish. But this is a feat of voice acting. He deserves his own movie. He deserves a sequel. He deserves that big title card at the front with the big minion eyes. It was, honestly, bravo. You invented something fantastic. It's caught on, and it was fun.
Minions.
I've taken issue with celebrity casting for voice acting in these blockbuster animation films because of the trend to prioritize a grounded performance. These aren't cartoons. These are characters in another universe that looks very different than our own. I wanted to watch cartoons. This was a cartoon. I like it. It's a breath of fresh air. The attitudes of these characters, the irreverence of the things that they do, the jokes that they make. I mean, it's silly. It's good old-fashioned silly, and that's why a lot of us get into voice acting in the first place. We are silly people, and we want to make funny voices. If the celebrities are doing it, there's a good chance that that kind of stuff could come back for, people like me on that rung of acting. So it's, I gotta say, it's refreshing. Is it a groundbreaking film? No. Is it fun for kids? Yeah. Is it fun for adults? Uh-huh. Especially because you have these guys, these little minions, they're singing covers of, the one that got me was they sung a cover of Cecilia by Simon and Garfunkel, but in minion speak. And it was weird and funny and strange. And that's something that's there for any adult watching it. There's plenty of that. There's a lot of 1970s references through the whole thing.
Minions.
The performances don't rely that much on the animation for these emotions. That's what we see a lot with Pixar, is that the animation does a lot of the acting. Here, doesn't matter how big a celebrity you were, you did some real voice acting here. You came to play, you played, and you did a good job. They got celebrities with distinctive voices. Alan Arkin, Russell Brand, Steve Carell, Julie Andrews. These are people who, they're recognizable sounds, but they're also not these straight-laced, dramatic actors who just deliver everything as a consequence of thought. They're people with character! Did we really need Jean-Claude Van Damme to play a character named Jean-Claude? No, we didn't need that. I think he grumbled once. Okay. There's some talent in this movie, I gotta say. And to anybody who's like, celebrities shouldn't voice act, they should if they do this kind of stuff. Next up from Illumination, the thing that I'm excited to see, they're doing the Mario Brothers movie. Chris Pratt recently tweeted or said something about how nobody's expecting the voice that's coming out of Mario. Die-hard Mario fans are going to be like, why didn't we just get Charles Martinet to do this? He's been Mario forever. He'd be the right guy to do a movie. They're attaching Chris Pratt to it. Is Chris Pratt going to do the Italian Mario voice? I would love it. I would love it. If Chris Pratt does that, he'll be my hero. He might come up with something different. As long as it's not one of these grounded, serious, like, I gotta take Mario seriously now, don't do that to me. Illumination seems to have a good sense of humor and a good sensibility for these kinds of things, so I think they're the right studio to trust with it. We'll see what happens. Anyway, this has been Voice Actor Reacts.
Good night. Good night.
Yes, good night.
I went to go see Minions first thing in the morning on Friday. It was the first day it was out, and you know what? It was one of the more crowded theaters I've been in about 6 months. Early bird ticket sales to a kids movie in the middle of summer.
Wait, what day did you go see this? Friday?
Friday
And an early
morning.
bird, and you had like a full theater, huh?
Yeah.
Even in the summer, I wouldn't imagine that people are waking up that early on a Friday.
They would wake up early if they were going to save a little bit of money, and they did.
That's true.
Plus, it's a great way to start a day and get kids kind of exhausted, and then like they've been watching for a while, and now it's like, okay, I'm tired. I'll watch that whole movie, and it's not a long movie. It's like an hour and a half, and it's charming. I know we just watched me react to the voice acting in it, but I gotta say, the overall aesthetic, the attitude, and the sense of humor, everything about it is in complete opposition to Pixar. It's really equally good animation, but they focus on completely different things. One thing that I did mention before is these are cartoons. Like, there's nothing real about them. We look at the features of the humans. They're caricatures. Everyone's a caricature. Even the minor characters, like, they have these big odd features that make them stick out. The villains, super caricature-y. Giant hair, absurd clothing, and it's like, this is what cartoons were meant to be. Let alone the minions, who I don't even really know what they are, but we just sort of accept them as being these things.
They give him like an origin story in the last Minions movie, and that alone they had so much fun with. I just love watching that part of the movie.
I know, and again, it's like they just sort of arrive out of the ocean. They don't really, and they go a little bit further into how they got involved with Gru. All it is a line of dialogue and a scene where Gru, as a kid, he just goes, I know you answered my want ad. You know, so he just put out a help wanted ad, and all of these minions show up in his front yard, crying in the rain, asking for a job. And in the end, he goes, "I like your persistence. You get the job." And, you know, it's like, not everything has to be, this really meaningful, but like there's a good lesson in that. It's like, yeah, stand out in the rain, apply for the job, be steadfast, and like do your best. There was some really stupid humor about Otto the minion trading this, the central artifact of like the movie, which is like a necklace. He trades it for a pet rock because it takes place in the 70s. And so his infatuation with the pet rock is ridiculous. But it stands in, again, complete opposition to Lightyear, which had almost no sense of humor and levity. There were a couple bits with Taika Waititi's character, but Illumination doesn't seem to be as interested in teaching us how to be good people as much as it is putting on a fun show. And it was entertaining.
That's what I like about their animation. It's sort of, okay, so just to give you guys some more background, actually, Illumination is under the Comcast, NBC Universal umbrella, and they actually merged it with DreamWorks Animation, so it's sort of like all overseen by the same head of studio. So basically what that means is you're getting some of the same creative minds working on this series of movies now, where Illumination started off as its own thing, and they still obviously have a lot of those people there, but it's got some of the same pedigree now in terms of the people working on these movies as the ones who worked on Shrek. And
gotcha.
So I fully expect, I think there's a certain, like you said, there's a certain sense of, we're just here to have fun with these cartoons who are here to be wacky, and I mean there's heartfelt messages intertwined. I think the first two Despicable Me movies are some of the best animated films of the last decade and a half. The third one not
fun,
so much.
But yeah, they weren't empty of any meaning.
Exactly. And I just feel like sometimes Pixar with some of their movies gets a little too deep into the idea of getting across like a thematic message or trying to teach kids a lesson, or not even for kids, it's just maybe the adults who are watching it get some more. There's too much focus, I think, on telling a very well constructed, multi-layered story that gets across some sort of thematic message or messages. I'm not saying they preach to you, they don't usually, but with these Illumination movies and Minions being the latest example, they're just like, we're here to entertain you, you know? Maybe there is a message the characters go through an arc and there is something you're going to walk away with, but ultimately you're coming to the movie theater to have fun with your kids, and it's a family movie, and sometimes it's okay to just be that. It doesn't have to be much more than that.
You know what? It not only does it not have to be, like, really, that's what animation, that's what entertainment is about, especially kids animation. You know, we go so I go any place I go. If I go onto a website, if I go into a supermarket, anywhere I go, people are telling me how to think and how to behave. And it was such a refreshing experience to go in and be like, yeah, he just pulled his pants down and he made a joke about a fart. And it was, you know, Gru is a rebel as a kid. He goes in with a stink bomb into Jaws, and he throws the stink bomb in there and clears the movie theater out just so he can sit back and enjoy the movie by himself. You know, even the idea of Despicable Me, like, oh, I guess I'm bad, aren't I? Like, that's totally different than I'm trying to be the best person I can possibly be, and here's how I'm gonna do it. Boy, I faced a challenge and now I'm better. It's not that. And yet, young Gru grows as a character, and he has a hero, and he has this whole fixation on being a villain, but that's his thing. And he pursues it not because he thinks other people are going to think he's cool. It's just him being him. And I think a kid watching that isn't going to go, I want to be bad. They're going to go, oh, I'm going to be comfortable when I want to do the things that I want to do. And I'm going to pursue it even if everybody thinks I'm a loser for it.
I have a question, right? Like that this movie, and you bring up a couple of good points that I wanted to kind of touch upon. This movie technically is a prequel to like those Despicable Me movies, right? The character.
Yeah.
And when we see Gru as like a guy who he's fun to be bad, or is good to be bad, sort of as his mantra. And there's a certain coolness to him, like that he's so comfortable in his own skin. He doesn't care that he's a villain, and he's somehow enjoyable to just, you know he's a bad guy, but you can't look away when he's like torturing other people. And then you get to see him grow into a much more heartfelt, much more relatable father of these 3 adopted daughters, and then he has his whole family and blah blah blah. But this movie is obviously taking place before a lot of that character development has happened, or is meant to have happened. So how do you, because I'm somebody who desperately wants to see this movie, but I just unfortunately haven't had the time between Stranger Things and For All Mankind and Miss Marvel and everything else I'm watching. I just haven't had the chance to go to the theater. But so I'm asking you, how do you think they balance that part out of it, where this is a pre-Despicable Me trilogy, Gru, who somehow still has to be the hero of the movie, but at the same time is like technically a bad guy?
You know what? They actually did a really good job with it, because they established Gru as, a child to a single parent, basically, and she's dating like a guru or something. But, he lives with his mom, and he doesn't have a father figure, and so he idolizes this villain. And in the end, he gets to team up with this guy and work for him and learn from him. And that's where they sort of plant the seed of, you can learn from your hero, and your hero can be a kind of father figure to you. And it doesn't matter if your hero is a villain. I think it does a nice job of bridging the gap between villain and father figure, and showing how that can even compute in his mind by the time he gets to that point. This really is the rise of Gru as a character, because it shows you can be this childish, villain-centric kid and still be a good role model to your children.
Okay. And the other question then would be how much of the movie, because I know the first Minions movie was, despite all the other characters that were in there, including the villain played by, I think it was Sandra Bullock voiced the female antagonist in the first one. It was largely a very much, you could tell it was a Minions movie because it was about them. A lot of the slapstick comedy gags were like the focus of the film. Does this movie become more about Gru the longer it goes, or is it still the focus of the narrative stay with the Minions?
There are some points where it feels a little unbalanced, but generally I'd say they pay equal attention to, the Minions and Gru. I think it's more about Gru, and I think this will serve to bridge those two franchises together, even though they're the same franchise. But, we focus more on these three main Minions, and it's always them, but like as clones, I guess. And I don't know, there's a whole Kung Fu training sequence that, the Minions are learning Kung Fu.
I can just imagine how fun that would be to watch.
It was fun. But, I think the Gru aspects of it are more compelling. The Minion stuff is just funny. It's just silly, funny, goofy stuff. And I like that.
Okay, so what you're saying is this is a movie you'd recommend?
Yeah, if you have to choose between this and Lightyear, see this.
Which is surprising, honestly. I wouldn't think... Well, here's the thing. I always thought... Because they're two very different kinds of movies. Like, I never would have said that you can't really make a one-to-one comparison on so many fronts, but if you were to simply say which is a better time at the movies, you would say this is a better time at the movies.
If you're gonna take all of your kids to go see an animated movie this month, this should be the one you go see.
Okay. Well, I mean, you've got me convinced because I not that I needed a ton of convincing, mind you, because I have been excited. I love the franchise. It's like the first Despicable Me movie to me is still as revolutionary as Shrek was. I mean, you can only be Shrek I'm not saying it's Shrek level, but because Shrek was a absolute phenomenon of a franchise.
Shrek was its own thing, yeah.
But Despicable Me is carved out like a niche in modern day animation where Disney and Pixar animation dominates, and they have a certain brand of storytelling, which as I mentioned earlier, I feel like Minions and Despicable Me franchise in general as a whole, it's the epitome of the type of animated movies where you go to the movie with your family, you just have a fun time. It's like, and then Illumination Entertainment in general, whether it's this franchise or Sing or The Secret Life of Pets. I know these movies generally don't draw the same level of Rotten Tomato scores that some Pixar movies might.
Yeah.
They don't draw the same acclaim, but you just want to like watch a animated movie and have fun. I feel like, especially if you're a fan of like the era of cartoons like Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes, where they're not trying to tell you some highfalutin story that has some thematic lesson. It's just fun.
I've reached a point where I'm really bored with overly complex, overly deep, or just convoluted content. I like things that are made to entertain. I think that's really how I can sum up my aesthetic taste for this year. I'm just done with being burnt out on trying to follow a complex plot or super deep story, like character development. Just get me there. Let me have a good time and let me leave the theater with a smile on my face.
Yeah, that's kind of, I like it. Because I think that's kind of the appeal of a movie like Minions, is the kind of the appeal behind the unbearable weight of massive talent. Because the premise is simple, the story is pretty simple. Top Gun Maverick, I think the best example of a very simple story, but one that earns your attention and then just is a heartfelt, touching. It's not trying to like give you some kind of convoluted plot with some large overarching theme that needs to get across or some kind of message that you're supposed to walk away with. It's just there to entertain you. And you know, I think that sense of escapism is what really defines, I think, some of the best stuff Hollywood has done, like, you know, throughout the years, decades. And
can we call it something other than escapism? Because okay. I don't think this is so much as escapism as much as it is a chance to come up for air. You
Fair.
know, it's levity, but it's not escapism, because when we've gone through this, I think we've reached a trend of always trying to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And so when you're at that depth and you're swimming at that depth for that long, it's really nice to just go.
Right. Yeah. No, and you know what? It totally makes sense how you're describing it, because the two biggest genres of film that we have been seeing at the box office, especially in terms of making money and getting all the attention over the last decade and a half, superhero movies, which have always tried to find validation by giving them greater meaning than just being a goofy superhero movie. Like if you went to watch Spider-Man 1, or just call Spider-Man, or Spider-Man 2, and less so Spider-Man 3. But even, hey, I'm a defender of the dancing Tobey Maguire, the emo Peter Parker. I think
in retrospect
fun.
We all like that.
It's goofy fun, right? Or like Batman and Robin, before superhero movies had to be this grounded, realistic, and it's in a manner of speaking, it's the entire genre seeking validation from Hollywood. And I think the same applies to that other half of that equation, which is movies like live action adaptation of Disney films, or Disney Pixar animated movies.
I am so
which are
ready.
All trying to like
ready for Hollywood to have a sense of humor again.
Yeah. It's in an era when all of those movies are trying to elevate their art forms or their genres to be considered for serious prestige level storytelling. These kind of movies like Top Gun Maverick and Minions and The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, they just say, well, not every single one of those movies has to be prestige level content. You just want to have fun and go to the movies and just, it's summertime, you know? You're not trying to watch something heavy all the time.
And we've been through so much these last couple of years. It'd be nice to just sit in an air-conditioned room and laugh.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. I think you summed it up so perfectly right there. That's all you need. It's the simple things in life that we have to learn to appreciate once more, because we haven't had those for so long. Yeah.
I agree. Now we transition gracefully and smoothly into the next topic of the show, but not before telling you to follow us, like and subscribe, and be a part of the Oh So Curious family. You're our family. You're our brother. We adopted you. Congratulations. You're part of our family. You didn't have any say in it. Actually, you do. You can follow us. But we're fun people. You're a fun person. Let's have fun together. Thanks for watching.
Okay. I've got one thing to say after watching episode 4 of For All Mankind. NASA screwed NASA.
Nothing changes. We continue with the rescue mission.
We're just gonna ignore Dev?
Give me an updated state vector for the Russian vessel. You got a problem, Danny?
That's right. NASA screwed NASA. If you watch this episode, you know what I'm talking about. And you know exactly why I'm saying that. Because, hey, look, there's a reason why in real life shit like that does not happen. You should have known, NASA, that if you're gonna pull some baller move like that out of the middle of nowhere, pulling out solar sails, which, okay, I think they exaggerated a little bit, just a little bit, the effect that it would have had, just how much of an effect it would have had in terms of speeding up their journey to Mars as compared to the other two spacecraft from Helios and the Soviets. But let's just say it does have as extreme of effect, and the fact that they figured out solar sails that big and that effective. I mean, look, the biggest thing about solar sails, the reason why in real life they're still not feasible at that scale, is because of how light the material has to be and how difficult it would be to unfurl it to the size that you would need that they show in the show without it ripping into pieces and all that, so that the weight would be light enough and basically adding a lot less than the amount of energy that it would be collecting from the photons bouncing off of it, therefore giving the spacecraft momentum. That equation is the hard thing to crack, not just even the material science of it all. It's also the fact that it would be incredibly difficult to fold it up and then have it unfurl in space perfectly. And not just one panel. In this show, they show 4 giant ass, triangular panels unfurled. Not easy. I mean, they tested the James Webb Space Telescope for years trying to make sure its heat shielding had unfurled. There were like, I think there's 3 layers of it in there, and that it works well. And it was a fraction of the size of what you should see in the show. So the feasibility of that, most people are probably not gonna care so much, but dude, first they were like, well, yeah, they figured out fusion. I'm like, okay, great, I guess they did. They're still using fission-based engines though on these spacecraft, like the Nerva engine design, essentially, where you have these fission material rods. I don't know if it's plutonium or uranium or whatever, and it's center of the engine, and you have the helium-3 or hydrogen being shot at them and stripping subatomic particles, I think it's protons, off of those rods, and then getting compressed in the bell nozzle and being shot out the back to give you your nuclear fuel. I get that, it's feasible, it was almost a reality in real life, but I think this show is, so far up until this point, has done a very good job of being very realistic, but now starting to really push the realms of believability in some ways, particularly how it ties into story. But still, look, the drama wasn't good. It was good in this. You could finally see the dev character take a turn for the worse, and I was like, I saw it coming. I'm glad they're paying it off. But yeah, again, going back to the point I was trying to make earlier, like, there's a reason why they don't do that kind of stuff in real life, where, oh, most of the way through the journey, NASA's coming in second, Helios is winning, and Soviets are third, but they're still pretty close. I think hours or minutes within each other, they would arrive at Mars. Then all of a sudden, NASA pulls out these solar sails, so believable, like these huge ass solar sails, and then jumps basically 8 days ahead of everybody else, pushing the Soviets, who were already technologically inferior to the other 2 parties, to take extreme measures where they basically melted down their engines trying to get ahead. And then, yeah, of course, Helios has every right as a private company to say, okay, we could go rescue them, but we don't have to. And it's less of a moral decision, more of a business decision for them, to be honest, and I don't blame them, even though, yeah, Dev does come across as the bad guy for doing that. And obviously, when you weigh saving lives versus get to Mars and be there first, I mean, yeah, saving lives is the moral high ground to take, and they obviously don't do that. But as a business, you're allowed to do that as long as you're fulfilling the goal that you have for your stakeholders, which is making money. And you know what? For a company that is based entirely on getting to Mars and making money off Mars, making that choice is not entirely unfeasible. In fact, you might see something like that happen in the not too distant future, although PR nightmare and all that stuff will probably play into it. In this case, however, that doesn't matter so much because there's NASA there, a government agency who has much more of an impetus to then go rescue the Soviets, whose astronauts are now in trouble. Basically, left to their own devices, they would die from radiation from basically the melted down engines in their spacecraft, which, by the way, in real life, if they were designing spacecraft with nuclear engines, they would have a means to jettison and separate them from the main spacecraft. They would have redundancies, they would have, more conventional chemical rockets or something like that, because you'd always know there was a possibility when you have a Nerva-like engine that is a fission-based engine, not fusion-based, because fusion-based engines would not melt down. And fusion engines inherently cannot melt down. That's just physics. I don't want to dive into it too much. Basically, it has to do with the fact that you are creating a pressure vessel to create fusion. As soon as that pressure drops below a certain level, the fusion stops and everything sort of just dissipates, and there's no runaway reaction like in a fission cycle, which is what you have from traditional nuclear reactors, and that's what they're using here, like a form of that with the Nerva, which also the Soviets have a similar form of that. There's a whole storyline in this show about how the Soviets got their hand on that technology. So yeah, NASA has to then go and rescue the Soviets, and while they're doing that, things go a little awry. There's a tank pressure goes beyond critical, and one of the tanks connected to one of the engines of the Soviet craft, they're basically almost docking with each other, like they've got these cables strung between the American and the Soviet spacecrafts, and it's almost like what you would do if you were on the ocean, and let's say, for example, a Russian cruiser was sinking, and the American cruiser had to go right next to it, and you can't really dock. It's too dangerous. Like, you'd get as close as you can, and then you would just throw harpoon cables across, and then try to get people to come across on those. That's basically what they're doing in the show. But then if one ship all of a sudden has this big pressure leak, just blow on one side of the ship, and now it's hurtling towards the other ship, the rescuing ship, that's problems. That's causing problems. And as you see in the end of this episode, it causes them quite a few problems. You have some unfortunate deaths of astronauts, who get crushed between the two ships, who get wiped out by the snapped cable flailing around in space. It's unfortunate, and the consequences, I think, ultimately all lead back to what NASA did. And if they didn't pull off that shit, I mean, look, they could have done it right from the get-go, like from early on, and then there would have been a certain expectation. They were well ahead, and this is how it's going to be. Everybody else that has a chance to either get back into it or just accept their fate from an early stage of that transit between Earth and Mars. But they did it late. They did it like this, like a show-off move. Look, we're gonna get there, and ultimately that caused a domino effect, and that cost, by the end of this episode of the show, the lives of both American astronauts as well as Soviet astronauts, and who knows how many more, because the episode ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, and it looks like there's probably more damage, more chaos to come. Yeah. So as I started by saying, NASA screwed NASA. And that's the conceit of this episode, and even some of the side plots that this episode started to build upon. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the next episode brings, episode 5 of For All Mankind. Episode 4 certainly came with its controversy and, like I said, some, pushing the limits of believability. I'm still on board for the ride, this is still a great show. Watching it week to week, I'm sure there's going to be some bumps along the way. I'm hoping this is just one of those. For All Mankind is still, I think, the best sci-fi show on television right now. So I can't wait for more. Episode 5, here we go.
Ha! You don't have time to watch all the movies coming out this month. That's why we're going to help you decide what not to watch. Oh So Curious presents Movie Eliminator, July 2022.
Jane?
DC League of Super Pets, Minions: The Rise of Gru, Sharpstick, nope, Neon Lights, Where the Crawdads Sing, Miss Harris Goes to Paris, Both Sides of the Blade, Thor, Love and Thunder, The Princess, Vengeance, The Gray Man, Take the Night. Winner.
Don't waste your time!
Big summer. A lot of blockbuster type of things coming out. Thor: Love and Thunder looks like it's going to be the guy that takes the cake. I mean, a lot of press for this, a lot of hype for it. It looks unlike any superhero movie I've seen, because we're just kind of dealing with a guy in a midlife crisis, it seems, after he's accomplished everything, in terms of being a superhero. Now he's gonna try and find love. Is that what I'm getting from this?
It feels like that. Well, because then he's like the trailers are hinting at him rekindling his romance with Natalie Portman's Jane, who's become Mighty Thor in this movie. And
so what, he's gonna rekindle his relationship with Natalie Portman's character?
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, have you seen the arms on Natalie Portman? They really put her through the grinder, like in terms of just getting in superhero shape. And
I'll be honest, I'm more shocked by her blonde hair. That's awakening something in me.
Is she a natural blonde, or she's not a blonde?
I believe she's a brunette. I've only seen her brunette and with no hair at all.
I feel like she always had like a dirty blonde thing going for when she was in these Thor movies, the first two.
I haven't been watching them, so I just haven't seen her in Marvel stuff. Period. So
it's interesting that you pointed that out of all the things, because I wouldn't have. I sort of, because I feel like that looks similar to what you've seen her as in the previous two. Well, not the Ragnarok, but the two Thor movies before that. The first, the Thor, and then Thor: The Dark World. But anyway, I mean, when you get to stand next to Chris Hemsworth and what he looks like for these movies, I guess you have to bulk up a little bit, right? Like,
yeah.
Well, okay. Yeah. I'm excited. Are you looking forward to this? I know we're gonna watch it. I know you're gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch. But are you looking forward to this?
I haven't really been on the Thor train, so am I super amped for this? No. I mean, I'll go see it. I imagine it'll be more fun than Doctor Strange 2, which was kind of rambling.
Yeah.
This, I mean, more than anything, the whole concept of a superhero in the aftermath of like, well, I guess there's really nothing else to do. What do I do? Is like weird. So that'll be interesting to see how they pull that off.
We haven't seen that before in Marvel because, especially because when you talk about the Phase 4 of Marvel Cinematic Universe, Thor is really the only remaining member of the original 6, you would say, the Avengers, other than maybe Hulk, but Hulk is never getting his own movie. So
no,
not as long as Universal Studios owns the distribution rights and Marvel does not want to give them the money. So he's always going to show up in other things, like She-Hulk is when he's next going to be in, I think. But other than, and even him, I mean, but when it comes to like one of these Marvel characters, like Iron Man's gone, Captain America's story is done, Black Widow's gone. Who else was in that movie? Hawkeye's sort of moved on to being a side character now. He had his own show, which wasn't really even his own show. But Thor is like the last remaining from that generation. And he's the only one who's gone this far, where he's sort of gone through all of those like story arcs. And now you're like, well, where do we go from here? So it's a very interesting challenge because Thor is uniquely the only person in that position as a character within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's also, at this point, probably the most recognizable part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I think that alone draws a lot of interest because again, you don't have Robert Downey Jr. around anymore. You don't have Chris Evans around anymore. Scarlett Johansson's not there. So he is really one of the last OGs left in the MCU. So I'm looking forward to it. I want to go see it. From what I'm hearing, most people think this is not as good as Ragnarok, but it's still one of the best movies they have done in the Phase 4 era. So,
okay, that's encouraging. I'll see it and I'll let you know what I actually think of it. Well, Minions is they have a cult following. I saw it. I liked it. In terms of all the animated stuff coming out, I think that's probably the good one. The League of Super Pets, it's going to be a lot of celebrities voicing dogs.
Before we even talk about that, I got to talk about another one. Paws of Fury.
Oh yeah. I've been seeing the trailers for this. Which studio is doing this? Because the animation is totally different from
I think it's Paramount.
Not Pixar. It's Paramount.
That's the logo I'm seeing on the poster. It's got a bunch of others, but I think this is. So if it's Paramount, I don't know what animation studio that technically lands under, but it's not Illumination, it's not obviously Pixar or anything like that.
And it looks different, and the tone is different. They got a good cast, but again, if you're gonna have celebrities voice acting in a movie, make sure that they're really bringing something interesting to it, and that they're really going over the top. I can say that is what happened in Despicable Me, in Minions. Like everybody does their best and brings a lot of energy to these characters.
I feel like it is a bit of an underdog because it's such an unknown commodity. It's not like a sequel or a spin-off or anything.
Yeah.
It has a potential to surprise people because this could be like the Kung Fu Panda of this year.
Yeah.
Where I don't think a lot of people knew exactly what that movie was going to be. They were like, Jack Black is in this. That was the big marketing push. But then they went and saw the movie, and I think it was surprisingly heartfelt and a genuinely good film. Who knows?
But again, Jack Black's a guy who brings crazy energy to everything he does.
Yeah.
So he was a good call for that. We'll see how people react to it. Super Pets, yeah. This Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, they love working together. It's I don't know.
Keanu Reeves is voicing the Batman in this movie. I forget who's voicing Superman, but yeah, Keanu Reeves is playing the Batman who you see, whose dog is the one voiced by Kevin Hart, and Dwayne Johnson voices Crypto the Superdog. So.
Yeah, Crypto the Superdog. Man, this
is an interesting movie. I don't know what reason this has to exist, but it exists, so I suppose.
I mean, Crypto the Superdog has existed in comics, in alternate universes of Superman. It had its own TV show, which I watched when I was sick home from school. Crypto the Superdog, totally real thing. I'm surprised it's taken them this long to do it. I hope they do it justice, because it's a nice dog. It's a good boy.
I'm interested in seeing this movie just to see if it's not a total disaster, like, because again, I don't know what the reason for it to exist is. It feels like a movie that was Dwayne Johnson was doing Black Adam, and he convinced them that, if I'm doing Black Adam, you want me and Kevin Hart to do something together? This is what we're doing. For some reason, Central Intelligence 2 did not quite make it up the list, because I'm looking forward to seeing that potential sequel more than anything else. The two, or maybe go to Sony and be like, ready to do Jumanji 3. Let's do that now. I would rather see those two guys. But anyway, it's Black Adam was originally supposed to be dropping on that date, and then they had some production delays, so they moved it around. So now we get Super Pets in July, and I think Black Adam ends up in October. So
all right.
I don't know if it's the best trade, but probably more by necessity than anything else. Now we did talk about some Avengers earlier on. We do have an Avenger, or a former Avenger, in Chris Evans on this Netflix movie, The Gray Man. Drops on July 22nd. There's been a trailer. It's being I think directed by the Russo brothers. And this movie is also written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who are the two guys that wrote all of those Captain America movies, as well as the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame movies. Obviously, you have Ryan Gosling here on the poster. He's, I think, the primary hero, like the protagonist, and then Chris Evans playing the bad guy. But if you couldn't tell, the mustache didn't give it away for you.
I gotta be honest with you. I think we have something to be afraid of here. I think between Top Gun and this, they're trying to make mustaches happen. If in the next 5 years, I think mustaches are gonna try. They're trying to make the same way when Tiger King came out. I just knew mullets were going to come back, and they did, and people were doing mullets, and mullets have been around now, and nobody's really talking about them.
Wait, you sure that's not because Billy Ray Cyrus and Hannah Montana with the business in the front, the party in the back? You don't think that's what brought mullets back?
That was years ago. Tiger King was a cultural phenomenon. Top Gun Maverick is a cultural phenomenon. 2025 will be the year of mustaches and mullets, I think. Let's keep going.
It is, just to let you know, this is apparently the most expensive Netflix movie ever, and they've got the talent to back it up. Ana de Armas is also in the movie. And I think no, that was a different movie. I think I was confusing. I think Vanessa Kirby is in the next Mission Impossible movie, and I watched the trailer for that. But hey, The Gray Man is like Netflix's one of their like biggest movies of the year, and it's coming out this month, so I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. The Russo brothers haven't really done anything that good since their Marvel stuff. So, but moving on, like you said, I think has the potential to be the best movie of the month from Jordan Peele. Nope.
I'm gonna keep this real short and just say nope.
Really? Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. Get Out, I connected with on certain levels. I still, to be honest, don't quite relate to it in a way where I think of it as the revolutionary movie that it was made out to be. I'm not denying it the merits on which it was given, had the success and drew the success that it did. I just didn't think Get Out was as good as a lot of people thought it was. Us was totally, I was like, what the hell is this? And this movie now is getting into aliens, and I'm sure it's not as simple as just aliens and horror. There's probably more to it than that. But
I didn't even like what he did with the Twilight Zone. I'm not.
We can talk about this
Jordan
for so
Peele.
long.
Next episode. You know what? That's what we'll do. We'll see Nope. And we'll talk about Jordan Peele, and we can talk about the Twilight Zone and all that stuff, because I loved the original Twilight Zone, still do, but there's missed opportunities there.
Some of the episodes that are mirroring the episodes from the original Twilight Zone work well. I just don't like the brand of storytelling that he's bringing to that new Twilight Zone on CBS, or what is that, Paramount Plus now. But hey, there's plenty of good movies coming out this month. I think my most favorite ones are Thor, and I'm looking forward to Nope. The animated movies, depends on which one hits and which one doesn't. Obviously, Minions is probably my favorite of the three that we talked about. How about you?
I'm looking forward to Vengeance. We didn't mention it, but it's BJ Novak's thing. But
hold on,
it's we don't have to make a big deal out of it. But
there we go. There's Vengeance. We can't skip it. I know this is something you were interested in. So before we finish up, BJ Novak, Vengeance, and I do think that's Ashton Kutcher there on the right.
It looks like him.
Yeah.
This seems like a genuine. And I'm hoping it's a genuine attempt to bridge a little of the cultural divide in America, which is a noble idea. The execution, I've yet to see how he does it, but from the trailer, it looks charming, it looks different, and it's going to be sort of a murder mystery, horror, thriller, comedy. So that's a fun space to play in no matter who you are, to do comedy mixed with horror. The Scary Movie stuff was always fantastic, but this is again an opportunity to bring people together and to make people feel good. BJ Novak, he has a good track record of creating things that are fun for families, like his children's books, but also doing thoughtful, interesting stuff. So yeah, that's my pick for the next month.
I'm looking forward. This is one of those movies that's going to fly under a lot of people's radars, but I'm hoping, because the premise, when you read the premise, you watch the trailer, there's definitely something to it that is very unique, and I don't think there's any other movie out there that's quite doing anything like it. So I'm interested. I just will probably wait to see what other people have to say about it before I give it a shot, because there's so much other stuff that we already talked about that's out there, in addition to what I have to catch up on from last month still. So I'm gonna take a wait and see approach with this one.
That's fair. I'll let you know what I think of it. And in the meantime, thank you for watching our show. Thank you for hanging out with us. Like us, subscribe us. If you like us, subscribe to us. My gosh, I can't speak. But let us know what you think about everything that's going on in the world, all of the, not politics, wow, look at me, my brain is fried. All of the movies, all of the stuff. I was going to say podcast. I think that's what I wanted to say. We're a podcast. Yep. Long morning, but getting through it. And thank you for watching Oh So Curious.
Miss Marvel Episode 4.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Karachi.
Okay, I've been really complimentary about the show up until this point, and I will say this, they went to Karachi and 80% of the way they got it right. But look, I was born in a family where my dad, my grandfather, and my uncle all worked for Pakistan International Airlines, PIA, the flagship carrier of Pakistan. And so from the early days of Jinnah International Airport, when it was still basically brand new, to what it is today, I know that place better than a lot of people who have either lived in Karachi or at one point lived in Karachi and, were in and out of the airport. And I gotta tell you, they got most of that portrayal right, but in some ways not so much. And this kind of applies to the entirety of the episode in many ways, because I'm gonna, kind of skip the formalities here. I mean, look, overall, the show was, again, it's still a very good show. The story is still moving along at a good pace. I do have some issues with it, but I do think in terms of how accurately they're portraying the culture, the environment, the background that the show is built on and around, the Pakistani culture, the South Asian history and culture and everything. They were going from strength to strength when they were showing us Miss Marvel and her family and Kamala Khan and her whole extended family, if you will, in Jersey City. I think that part they got very, very, accurate and on point. But once you start moving into that, deeper cut, you go into Karachi, you want to show Karachi, and you want to show the history of Pakistan and India and partition and all that. I think they're starting to sort of lose a little bit of authenticity. And the sad part about it is most people would not know that because most people are not familiar with that part of the world, or as familiar with that part of the world and the history of that part of the world, the culture, and how the people who live there both perceive themselves and like to portray themselves in like a show or a movie. And I think this is where I think they could do better. Again, like I said, 80% of the way there, but that last 20% matters oh so much, because I understand some of the way they portrayed like the market, the street market, and some of the parts of the airport that they portrayed in the beginning of the episode, and other elements of how they're showing the basically what Karachi is, like even the train station. So it's high level stuff they get right, but like for example, one gripe that I have with this show that I've sort of held on to for a long time without really going into it is I've lived in the US for like the last 14 somewhere around 15 years. And before that I was in England, and before that I was in Pakistan. I was born in Karachi. I was there till I was age 9, then we moved out, and that, I would go back and visit almost every year. But I've gone through this patch where for the last 12 years I haven't gone to Karachi. But still, I carry around with me a keychain, which I wish I had grabbed before I started doing this review. But I carry around a keychain which is basically the flag of Pakistan. And I've got, the cricket team shirts from the several years when they've won tournaments and whatnot, and you celebrate that, and I'm very much like there's a certain sense of patriotism that goes along with that, being born there and growing up there and whatnot. Living in the US, even like there's a dual identity that that you draw from, and even for me like a triple, like it's a three-way thing, because I lived in the UK for a while. I'm a big English soccer fan. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make though is one thing that this show has been missing, and I'm pretty sure it's on purpose, and I realize the reason why is they've never really truly shown the Pakistani flag anywhere, especially when there were any of the scenes and parts of the show that take place in the US in Jersey City and so on and so forth. And then even and I was like, okay, I'm kind of forgiving of that, sure, fine, whatever. I get that, like you're living in the US in Jersey City. These are first generation kids who were practically born, like Kamal Khan was born in the US, I think it's implied. But so I get that wouldn't be as close of a connection. But then when you get back to when you visit Karachi, you're showing Karachi, I'm like, you gotta now show that, right? I mean, look, I totally get, playing to so much to the whole partition storyline and how it ties into the mythology that the show's trying to build and everything. But this year, Pakistan and India will celebrate their 75th anniversaries since independence, like from the British rule and the two countries coming to being in their modern current form. And even Bangladesh, Bangladesh, not the 75th anniversary, but, now there are three countries. When they were initially in partition, it was Pakistan and India, and then later on, Bangladesh separated away from Eastern Pakistan. It used to be East Pakistan, and West Pakistan is what today is known as Pakistan. East Pakistan is now Bangladesh. There's a lot of controversy, a lot of history behind that. Wars were fought over all those things. And I know that those are hard things to get into. You don't want to get into that. It creates division and all that. And I think leaning into the idea of partition and this sentiment that there's this generation of people, especially the ones who were alive during partition, who long for the days when the two peoples of Pakistan and India were one. I get all of that, but in this episode, like I think the lead in show overall, I think they need to sort of balance it out a little bit better, because yes, that is true that there's but there was a certain generation of people who were still alive from that time. But if you think about it, 75 years ago, most people who are alive now who remember crossing borders during that time in 1947 are at least in their 80s, if not 90s. So it's very, there's far and few in between. There's fewer people like that around today there, and then the people who were not of that generation, there's not as many of them who have studied that history to that degree and to that reverence. And all of that to say, I think, the Pakistan Indian people are very much spiritually very similar. The cultures and the backgrounds and how we think about things, a lot of our languages, are very similar. Punjab was cut in half as a province when they partitioned the two countries, and there's a Punjab in India, there's a Punjab in Pakistan, and there's actually some religious sites that are located on what you would say would be the wrong sides of the border, if you will. Like if you are Sikh, there's a very holy place, a very holy site that you have to go on a pilgrimage, and you have to cross over into Pakistan to go to do it. And that ended up on the Pakistan side, whereas most of the Sikh population lives on the Indian side of Punjab. So that's one example of several things like that, where I think there's more that unites us and more that we share in our common heritage than we don't. But at the same time, unlike most people growing up today in Pakistan and India, think very much of the two countries as their own, countries with their own cultural identity in many ways. Again, there's a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of people identify with the Indian national identity and the Pakistani national identity, and that's not to say it's not to say that you can identify with one, but then that automatically antagonize the other. No, I think there's a lot of people out there who are like, I'm Pakistani or I'm an Indian, but that doesn't mean that I hate the other one, right? And it's everything has to be done with nuance, and I totally get that, but I really do feel like a lack for, even in this episode, like the closest we got to seeing a properly proportioned, correctly, proper, accurate, official version of the Pakistani flag was something that was backwards on the tourist, on the market, the street market, where this photographer who was asking for 1,500 rupees for this instant photo that he took of Kamala, and the flag was backwards, and the proportions of the star and the moon were not exactly accurate, and then there were these small flaglets that were hanging in the street market that were also not very accurately proportioned. Which, hey, I lived in Pakistan, celebrated Eid, celebrated the 14th of August Independence Day for Pakistan when I was there. Trust me, they get that right when the day comes, and of course they would. Why wouldn't they? But I think, and I get why part of the reason why they do it this way, because they want to not alienate the Indian audience. There's a huge Indian audience that actually has Disney Plus. I think it's called Disney Hotstar in India, where Miss Marvel is airing as a show, and there's a good chunk of the cast in this show that is actually Indian and from Bollywood and other parts of Indian cinema and television that play characters in the show, and I love to see that crossover. I love to see it. I mean, you had Farhan Akhtar in this episode. Fantastic actor, one of the best of his generation, and a multi-talented actor, producer, director, singer, songwriter. The guy is multi-talented, and he played a great role as that leader of the Red Dagger group. Didn't last past the episode, okay, I get it, but I enjoyed that. Kamala Khan's mother, another example of, great actress. They also had some Pakistani actors in this. I think Mavish Hayat is in this, and then Fawad, I'm forgetting his last name, but there's a few, Pakistani actors in this episode as well. I thought that was great. But again, I do think that, don't compromise on proper, accurate representation of Pakistani culture as it exists today to appeal to another audience that you can potentially alienate. I mean, because I think at that point it becomes more of a business decision than it is a decision to accurately portray a culture. And all of that, I don't want to come across sounding like, I have an inferiority complex or anything. I don't think that's my intention here. What I'm asking for is simply, hey, they showed Teen Talwar, they showed, again, not a super accurate representation of Jinnah International Airport, but they sort of had it. But, for example, the supermarket, the street market scene. I'm like, you've been to Karachi, there's malls, there's supermarkets, there's malls and stuff. That street market sort of makes Karachi look like this third world small city. I'm like, no, Karachi is the city of light. It's the bee's knees of the country in terms of you go to Karachi, you're like, this is Pakistan. This is one of the best examples of what Pakistan is, for all of its good, bad, and the ugly. That Karachi is a very good representation of what the country of Pakistan is. So in this episode, I felt like they did a lot of what a lot of Hollywood productions have done over the years. Even like Marvel, when they totally botched, in my opinion, the Bollywood sequence in Eternals, made Bollywood look bad and small. Similarly, I think here they caricaturize Karachi in some ways. That is a little. It bothers me. Like, and it's not just a Marvel critique; it's a critique of like how Hollywood likes to look at and portray these countries that are to the world seen as, you know, second, third world countries. But I'm like, okay, but this is still, you know, that doesn't mean they're living in 1990s technology and era. Like, yeah, maybe that's what it was like. Like, if you watch one of the Rambo movies, when they go to, I think it's Quetta or Peshawar, and it's basically one of the border cities near Afghanistan, and Rambo's there to get some weapon or meet some guy before he goes on a mission in Afghanistan back from the Soviet occupation era. And he goes through a street market, and it's actually that one I was like, oh, that looks accurate because it looks like they actually shot it there. Whereas I know with this one, most of those outdoor sequences were shot on a sound stage, or not a sound stage, but on a set that was erected in Georgia, in Atlanta. And that's where Marvel does a lot of their stuff. I get it. That's where they did a lot of those sequences in Age of Ultron and Captain America Civil War, when they go to like those African nations and stuff. But I do feel like they need to, you know, stop promoting that stereotype. Like, you want to show Karachi of today, like you can go to a shopping mall, you can go to a street, that kind of street market makes it look like Karachi is a very small city, very old city where people are. I'm like, yes, there's elements of that. You'll find those kinds of places in Karachi, but it's not an accurate, representation of what you would see if you were to go there and somebody was going to take you out. Like, let's go to the street market. There's no such thing as a street market. There's many big, like there's Sadr, there's other kinds of parts of the city and suburbs and districts, soft shopping districts and historic districts and things of that nature. And I think that if you're gonna go there, go all the way there. Don't caricaturize it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in the next episode. But I'm also now treading with a little bit of caution, because some of my suspicions, and even like the train station. I mean, Karachi station, I get it. You want to simplify it. Karachi's actually got like two big train stations, like Union and Kent Station. So like there's two different stations you could show as one or the other, but like again, they're sort of simplifying it. And to that degree, I get the reason why. And I think in spirit, they did a pretty good job with regard to production design. But all in all, I do believe there's a lot of room for improvement, and I do hope that, they can improve upon some of those criticisms that I have.
Next week, we are going to see and review Thor: Love and Thunder. This is likely to be the biggest Marvel movie of the summer. I suspect it will do better than Doctor Strange, just on the pure basis that Doctor Strange, even as a title, Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, really sounds awfully cerebral. Thor: Love and Thunder sounds pretty sexy.
It sounds like a bit of I think it sounds like a bit of a throwback in terms of they're really leaning into the Thor comics from like the golden years of Thor comics, essentially. Even if you look at, they've got the goat boat in this movie. They've got Christian Bale back in a comic book movie after he said he would never be in a comic book movie again, playing Gore the God Butcher. Just think about a character named Gore the God Butcher. And
yeah.
That's all you need to know what this movie, like how, like what to expect from this film. And then you
honestly,
of course
that's
have
probably
Natalie
how they got
Portman
him back in.
Huh?
That's probably how they got him back in.
They're like, hey, look, because the Christian Bale people forget he's not just the guy who played Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy, or he's done a bunch of faith-based movies in recent times. Christian Bale is a guy with a lot of range. Like he played what was it? He played Dick Cheney in that movie. I forgot what the name of the film was. Vice. And obviously we know him from, what was it, American Psycho?
Psycho.
I think
my favorite
he's leaning more into the American Psycho part of his personality for this one.
I love that. I love that side of his personality. No, it's he's great. You know what? That'll give me a reason to go see it. I like Christian Bale a lot. The guy is a talented, committed, and interesting actor. I like that guy.
I think this movie, just to kind of put a cap on this. I think this movie for me has the potential to be the best Marvel movie of the year, even though Wakanda Forever is also on docket for later this summer, or is it this? It might be more like fall, but it is coming out later this year. We already had Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I don't think any of the other movies really count as 2022 because Spider-Man came out in December. And then even the Disney Plus shows. I mean, Miss Marvel has been fantastic. Everything else has been sort of hit and miss. I do think Thor: Love and Thunder is going to be one of those movies that's going to be far less divisive than anything we have seen, especially since Spider-Man No Way Home. And even if you look back before Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi had a great reception, but Black Widow was eh. I think most of the Disney, like Loki, Captain America, well, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, even WandaVision for me was a little hit or miss. I wasn't a big fan of it, but I think Thor: Love and Thunder is probably my, other than Miss Marvel, and even Moon Knight, couldn't stick the landing. But I'm hoping Miss Marvel does stick the landing, but Thor: Love and Thunder might be like the movie which I will unabashedly like for the first time an MCU property since Shang-Chi that I will have no complaints about. That's my hope. And
I'm going to cross my fingers and hope for the same thing.
Yeah. There's just so much, the movie looks so much fun. That's what it comes down to. I can't wait to see the awkward conversations between Natalie Portman's Jane and Chris Hemsworth Thor, and that relationship being rekindled somehow. And
it looks like we have
rumors
the Guardians
are
of the
somebody's
Galaxy people coming back also.
Yeah. Maybe they should have her intern come back too. Kat Dennings' character. I forgot what her name was.
Kat Dennings. Yeah. She always had something good.
I wouldn't mind seeing her back in this movie somehow. She was last seen in WandaVision. I don't know if they've completely sectioned her off into the Miss Marvel character sphere now, or hopefully, because this is where she started. She was Jane's assistant in the first two Thor movies. I'm hoping they go back, even if it's just a cameo. I don't know why all the people
that's
that
what these things are at the end of the day, though.
Yeah.
It's like I'm expecting a lot of cameos. We'll see if they commit to the John Krasinski Mr. Incredible or Mr. Fantastic. I'm sorry.
No, I think they were done with that. Was like a one and done. It seems like, although there was apparently the mid-credit scene in this movie is like meant to blow people's minds because it's some kind of like
big cameo.
Holy crap! What the hell? Kind of a moment.
All right.
I don't know so much about the end credit, but mid credits, I think that's the scene that's supposed to get people's attention. So.
Okay, Marvel. We'll see what you got. Anyway, that's going to be next week on the show. Oh, so curious. A couple of curious minds looking at stuff happening in the world on the movies and the screens and all the stuff you're watching. If you're enjoying it, watch the show, subscribe, like, and tell your friends. We're here every Sunday, and we are letting you know what's going on throughout the week on Instagram and Twitter and all those other places. Hang out with us. This has been Oh So Curious. Have a good week.
Happy birthday, Tom.
Happy birthday, Tom.
And 4th of July.
That too.
Today we celebrate our Independence Day. And in the words
by
of the
seeing
great
Maverick again.
President. Yes. Go see it again.
Go see Maverick
it again. All right.
Alrighty.
Hello, boys! I'm back!
Thinking.
It's not happening with him.
It's a matter of life and death.
I'll tell you what's the matter with life and death. That beautiful lady over there. Hey, baby, check out the gun show going on over here. Boom, boom, firepower.
Killing is making a choice.
Hasta la vista, baby.
That's not how the Force works.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.